All right, gang. So we back with Taylor Schabusiness. We just went through a whole bunch. Now we're gonna look at the actual sentencing and let's see what happened. You know, this is still kind of live. I'm a little bit behind, but we will catch up and let you know.
Recommendation is that the defendant not be eligible for release at any point to extended supervision. Ultimately, the state's recommendation is that the defendant not be eligible for release at any point to extended supervision. And obviously, we're here for legally and morally the most serious offense somebody can commit in this state.
But sit up straight, bro.
Really, I think a few points bear emphasis. I'm not going to rehash the entire trial testimony for the court, but I do think a few points bear emphasis. Really, the manner and nature of which Ms. Schabusiness caused Shad's death in this case, I think is really one of the more egregious, frankly incomprehensible methods of ending another person's life that we've seen in this county and certainly in a significant period of time. So it's one thing we sometimes see intentional homicides where there is a bad choice. There is a decision in a moment of anger or whatever it is to pull a trigger on a gun or to hit somebody in anger. And while that intent exists when they're committing that act or
look at how
trigger, it's sometimes rather fleeting. The manner, as we heard from the defendant herself, explain how she ended Chad's life. This really wasn't a bad decision. It was a series of conscious efforts. It was continued effort over, as she said, 3 to 5 minutes, as she's
she wasn't
Detective
here.
Groff and Detective Kemp, pantomiming how she's pulling harder, how she's glibly talking about how he's turning purple, and I liked it. I'm pulling harder. He's coughing up blood. I'm pulling harder. I kept going. I was waiting for him to die. This really is
She didn't see it with that kind of.
It's a method of ending another person's life that really is quite significant, and I think evinces some significant concerns going forward, both in looking at
plead what you gotta plead.
Looking at some of the other factors the court's to consider, and which I'll be commenting on earlier. It's really one of the most horrific ways to end a person's life. And again, it's bad enough to do to anyone, but as we heard, there was this level of trust and friendship and familiarity between the two, which I think is just really makes the acts of the defendant really incomprehensible in that respect. You have
this guy is so
obviously
annoying.
The method of ending his life was significant and serious, but after the fact, not realizing, in the course of this conduct, her actions are going too far, and to the opposite, actually going further. As I commented on earlier, but not then owning up to what happened, not realizing the impact of her subsequent acts would have on Shad and his memory, on his family, on this community, really.
Come on, bro.
To engage in the acts that she did with his body, which I'm not going to comment on what those are. The court and counselor are aware of what happened. And the systematic and organized and laborious efforts she undertook.
How was that systematic? Gang, you gotta go check out the previous videos that I did covering this, or you could go to Law and Crime, check them out there yourself. I'm gonna let you know right now, they're pretty long. But she was trying to clean up with Clarax, those cleaning wipes. Who systematically prepares for a whole homicide and they use those 4x4 inch tissues, bro. Who essentially tissues? Who does that, bro? Systematically? Who? What, bro? And meticulously. That is so annoying, bro. He is reaching, bro. That's my opinion.
Again, that's nothing we've seen in this county.
Just because you never seen it don't mean nothing, bro.
I've seen acts.
You just come from la 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 and like paradise, bro. Like,
and I do think that's an extremely aggravating factor. I recall Dr. Tranquita's testimony.
You could tell even by his hand motions, bro. That's why I'm laughing at him, mocking him like that, bro. Like, you could tell by his hand motions, this man ain't never had to do nothing hard a day in his life, bro. Look at that chin. Suburbs, good life. Never hear no gunshot, nothing, bro. Just far removed from reality, bro. You could just tell, bro. Super far removed. Ugh.
From trial, talking about the amount of effort,
bro, no caller ID,
choice that would have to be done to undergo what the defendant did over a period of hours. This was not one bad choice in some respects. It was the choice to end his life in the first place, certainly a bad choice, but continued bad choices throughout the next day, throughout the morning and into the night, where she's finally stopped by law enforcement. It's really the three convictions that Ms. Schabusiness was convicted of, I think are just really some of the more egregious conduct that the court will sentence a person on for some time.
What are you saying?
The court saw the entire 8-hour interview in the course of the litigation. We saw a portion or portions of that interview as she's describing this to law enforcement. And really, we see really from moment one, and that continued throughout the pendency of the proceedings in the case, to her comments in the PSI. We'll see what the allocution is today, but really a lack of remorse or understanding or appreciation, I guess, is in some respects of the conduct that she's engaging in. We saw her calmly describe what happened, at some points being rather glib and smirking about what she had done. As we see later in the PSI, having very little remorse for what she's done. And ultimately, the defendant, we've heard a lot about drug use and mental health history, which I'll comment on later. But really,
you got more to say.
Herself is telling us why this happened, and it wasn't because methamphetamine. It wasn't because of mental illness. She's telling law enforcement why this happened. It happened because she liked it. It's because she wanted to do it. And again, throughout the entirety of this case, we see this underlying motive is essentially, it's kind of consistent, right? We see, and we have seen acts of acting out.
Bro, what are you saying?
Examiners who are seeing her. It's consistent in the state's view with a lack of remorse,
it's consistent with psychosis
of the conduct that she
type
engaged
behavior.
in. And I think that's
like
all
psychotic type behavior.
It's all an aggravating circumstance for the court to consider at sentencing. And I want to talk to, because impact on the crime victims is a factor the court considered. And I want to comment on that in two respects. First, the perseverance of this family.
Bro, this guy is making it up as he goes. I'm telling you, he's making it up as he goes.
Is to hear the things they've had to hear and experience the things they've had to experience, I think is tremendous. So the thought of the defendant having perpetrated this act and impacting them in that way, I think is incredibly concerning. I also, it was heartening as I've been the prosecutor for many months on this case, and reading the PSI, getting to know more about Shad, and I want to comment on that because unfortunately the case we've heard, really everything we've heard about him has been in the context of what Taylor did to him, and it's really unfortunate that that's the memory that some people will have about him. And again, that's a result of the defendant's acts, to, in some respects, really tinge the memory that some.
So what about the fact that Chad gave her the drugs that made her flip out? What about the fact that everybody in her life, according to what they're saying, knew that she had mental issues? If Chad was her husband or ex-husband or whatever and truly loved her, why would he be giving someone that he knows should not be doing the lightest of drugs one of the heaviest of drugs? If you truly love somebody and you know they have mental disorders, why do you have them on drugs? Why is no one looking at the initial cause of the problem? That's another thing I have a huge problem with people doing that, bro. Like, they would look at the guy who reacts, or the girl, whoever, the guy, the gal, whoever in a situation who reacts to something. They will look at that person and be like, hey, why you do this, da 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 da. And I'm always like, yo, they reacted to something. Don't you want to find out what caused them to act this way? You know, like the actual initial root cause of the problem. What caused them to react the way they react? It's a reaction. People don't react to nothing. They react to something. Something happened. Like, someone gave her the drugs. The guy who gave her the drugs happened to be her victim. You're trying to paint her victim in a truly innocent light. He's not truly innocent, bro.
May have of him, and I don't want that to be the case. But we heard the good. We heard how he was a good and a quiet kid. How he would always hug his dad on the way out of before he left the house. How he would read and knit and crochet with his younger sister. And that's the person the defendant took out of this world. You know, for all the talk about how young the defendant is, Shad was 24 when he passed. So all the things we hear the defendant wants to experience in life, she still has that opportunity in a confined setting. And simply put, Chad does not. So the impact on the crime victims, I think, is significant. We then look at Schabusiness's character. I guess I'll first comment on the prior history, which we consider, and I guess we're also sentencing on.
But all he asked you for was your sentencing.
She was just placed on probation.
What's your suggestion?
6 weeks before this offense, and appropriately so. In reviewing
she was placed on probation 6 weeks before the offense, and her ex-husband gave her drugs to use, knowing she's on probation. Even if nothing happened, where he was deleted and taken out of this world, he would still be messed up, bro. That's still a messed up situation. How are you gonna say you love her and you care about her? She just got off of probation and you already putting drugs in her veins, bro. And then his family gonna talk about, oh, she took the cowardly way out. Since when killing somebody was a cowardly way out? Like, since when? You know how goring it is to decapitate somebody, bro? That's not a cowardly way out. If she shot him, you probably could have said that. To decapitate somebody, a coward doesn't do that, bro. What are you talking about? People not trying to face the truth, bro. He was a drug. He gave her drugs. He was her supplier. She tripped out on the drugs. And he felt the consequences. So the sentence shouldn't be too harsh on her because she has a prior history of mental issues. She needs help, not necessarily punishment.
But the complaints, she kicked an officer. There's indications of methamphetamine or other substance abuse that led to that conduct. She then, in the fleeing case, fled at 80 miles an hour down to downtown Green Bay when it's populated with bar patrons and others. Again,
Gang, I'm gonna have to move forward because this guy is too repetitive. All right, guys. So after talking forever, the prosecutor had to give it up, and now we're going over to defendant to hear what he has to say, his suggestions to, well, not the defendant, but the defending lawyer to hear their side, what they want to request from the court, and yeah.
Mr. Freilich.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. There's a lot of information that the court has to sift through and assess and analyze in this case. We've got the State of Wisconsin Department of Corrections pre-sentence investigation report.
Right back,
we also have the Forte Investigations independent PSI or pre-sentence investigation report. The court heard some testimony from family members, my client's cousin, her father, her grandmother, Dr. O'Donnell. What we have here is a horrific situation that happened. It can't be undone. Certainly, the defense agrees that Taylor Denise Schabusiness has to be punished. But she's a young person. She's 25 years old. We can't undo what happened. What we know is that she's got family that supports her, that loves her, family in Texas, family in Ohio, extended family out there. They're all willing to try and help Taylor in whatever way they can. I think that my client, Your Honor, is not a throwaway. She's not a monster. She's certainly got problems, and over time, I think she can get control over her problems, get help, get rehabilitation, and also be punished. Clearly, when during the trial, the court saw the videotape footage, and when the Green Bay police detectives and officers came to the Eastman Avenue apartment and they made contact with Taylor out on the porch or on the steps, and then had her go back inside and sit down on the stairs, you could tell that she was high on drugs. And then eventually she was questioned and taken out to the police squad car for further questioning down at the Green Bay Police Department. But Taylor is not a throwaway. She's a human being. It's not an eye for an eye. I'm very impressed by Michael Therian, Shad Therian's father. He has a huge heart, and he forgives my client for what happened. And he, from what I heard, believes that he thinks that my client should be given the opportunity for parole or extended supervision down sometime in the future. And I'd ask that the court consider that. He's the victim in this case, and what he asks of the court should be strongly considered.
True.
I have a client who is very young. She's a young woman. She has severe mental health problems. It's the elephant in the room. We can't ignore it. She's got all kinds of mental health problems. They've been bore out in the records from Prevea Health, from Nicolay Psychiatric Center, from Bellin Health. She was under a civil commitment order in 2021 and under an order to take psychotropic medication. And this young lady has a lot of mental health issues that need intensive treatment and counseling over time.
All right, gang. So we kind of understand where everybody's going and what they want from the court. So let's see if we can actually see what the sentence is.
Licensed abuse counselor indicates that Ms. Schabusiness' present inability in 2022 exists. My client has these mental health problems. She's not getting treated on any medications and probably needs to be. She needs to see professionals to help her address some of these problems that she has. But with the proper treatment, with the proper medication, things like her father, Arturo Coronado, testified to. Her consideration for extended supervision, make her complete a mental health assessment, comply with all recommendations, have her complete an AODA assessment and follow those recommendations, submit a DNA sample that's required under Wisconsin law. I think that Forte Investigations did a very good job, a very detailed analysis of my client's problems. they did an alcohol and other psychoactive substance abuse evaluation and concluded and opined that my client has a history of using mind-altering substances, that that she had some losses in her life, but that she also had some good parts of her life where she graduated from high school, had a baby, had jobs. It talks about the history of using substances. Well, it looks like she started using alcohol at age 6 and then continued onward with using marijuana, maybe at about 14 or so, and then got into stimulants, the methamphetamine, and started using methamphetamine at age 21. You know, using these drugs, the methamphetamine is probably one of the worst drugs you could possibly use, but it changes your brain. It changes the chemical composition of your brain. It causes all kinds of problems. She used marijuana for sometimes almost daily until she got to be 21. So you can understand maybe how her thinking and her judgment and her ability to process was completely impaired. And then you add another layer of the mental health problems. Of course, it's going to create hallucinations and auditory and visual hallucinations where she doesn't go to sleep, stays up all night, stays up for days on end. Certainly, she was under the influence of methamphetamines at the time of this offense. And she really hasn't had much in the way of treatment. I think treatment could help fix or reduce some of the problems that she has. I think she's open to it because she tried it in the past. And maybe she resorted to drugs, Your Honor, because that's what she saw her mother do as far as using alcohol or other things. And that's how they coped. You know, you learn from your parents. My client, apparently, according to Carrie Nitz, meets the criteria for substance misuse diagnosis. And all the different diagnoses are as follows: alcohol use disorder, cannabis use disorder, severe opioid use disorder, morphine, stimulant use disorder, methamphetamine, stimulant use disorder, crack cocaine. And that Carrie Nitz, NITZ, recommends that Ms. Schabusiness engage in treatment in a residential or inpatient service program where she can receive intensive services in a structured environment with a focus geared towards motivational and intervention strategies, as well as promotion of recovery and close monitoring of sobriety. It's recommended that these services be received duly with the services to address her significant mental health related issues. Providing these kinds of services and recommendations, it may be possible for Taylor Schabusiness to obtain control of her life, engage in meaningful relationships with others, and adequately address her substance misuse, and which could possibly change the direction of her life, benefiting her and the criminal justice system. I think it would be a tragedy to, as an argument on behalf of my client, to give her life in prison without the possibility of parole. I think that the court should definitely take into account what the defense is recommending, what the independent pre-sentence investigation is recommending, and what Michael Thurian is recommending. I don't believe that my client completely understand or fathom what was going on. And when she was talking to detectives from the Green Bay Police Department, she was still hopped up on drugs. Her mind just wasn't thinking straight. How could it? But she was cooperative and told law enforcement what happened, gave them information that helped with their investigation. The fact that she was cooperative should be considered by the court. I calculated the jail credit, and she was arrested on February 22nd of 2022. So through today, I come up with 581 days of credit. I talked to my client. I don't know how many hits of meth she took. She indicated maybe it was 51 hits prior to the incident, but she took a lot of meth. I would argue and submit that the more you use, the worse it gets, especially if you have an underlying mental health problem. And the underlying mental health problem, as Dr. O'Donnell states, it was exacerbated by the heavy use of drugs.
All right, gang. So now we're gonna hear from Taylor Schabusiness herself. All right, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Schabusiness, this is your opportunity to address me. If there's anything on your mind you'd like to say before I pass sentence.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
Oh, geez.
Very good. Well, then, when passing sentence on cases like this, the court has to consider the factors set forth in State versus Galleon. So I have to consider the gravity of the offense, the character of the defendant, the need to protect the public, as well as other aggravating and mitigating circumstances, including rehabilitative needs and punishment and deterrence, and then craft a sentence in each case that's appropriate. In this case, when I consider the defendant's character, I can say that over the course of this case, I've learned a great deal about you, Ms. Schabusiness. First of all, you were born in Chicago, lived there until you were about age 10, 12 rather. You seem to have had a stable childhood. You were loved by your mother and your father and your brother. And unfortunately, your mother passed away when you were 12, your brother passed away in a vehicle accident, and your dad's incarcerated. But I'm confident that all three of them probably still love you very much. Her father's employment was transferred to Green Bay when she was about 12 years old, and hence began the contact Ms. Schabusiness had with this community. She attended Bayport High School. At about 16, she moved to Texas to live with her grandfather. She graduated from high school in Cotulla, Texas, and eventually came back to Green Bay because she missed her father and her brother, which again doesn't surprise me any because, as I've indicated, I think they both love her very much. She's worked in this community. I read over the pre-sentence investigation report that I ordered, and that outlines some work experience that she has, and I think that's a favorable character trait because, quite frankly, not everyone that lives in this community does work. And I think it indicates someone who wants to get out and support themselves and not make anybody else do it. But that reflects on character. She has a limited court record. Certainly we have pretty much the entire extent of her criminal record in front of us here today. But it's a limited record that reflects on character. She's got a family who cares about her. And although sometimes I think people take that,
it's leaning in the good direction.
If you sit in this courtroom long enough, you'll realize that you should never take your family for granted because so many people come in sitting in that chair in an orange jumpsuit and have absolutely no one who will come in and say, "I'm with her," and that takes a little bit of fortitude to come in and do that. And frankly, today she's got extended family that comes in and does that for her because her direct family are unable to do that for various reasons. And so I think that speaks to Ms. Schabusiness's character because there's people in this world who find value and worth in her that they're willing to come in and stand behind.
And they
her.
aren't
So
even blood. Some of them.
I'm cognizant of the fact that she began using drugs at a very young age, marijuana at age 12, cocaine at around 18, and methamphetamine at around 18 as well. And we've heard a lot of testimony about drug usage. I don't have any doubt that has an impact on how people conduct their lives and behave from moment to moment. But quite frankly, as far as this incident and these events go, I think I've spoken to this already in prior hearings, but the fact of the matter is, when I watched the interview with law enforcement shortly after these events, I observed someone who was lucid, understanding what was going on, was tracking what was being asked of her, answers were tracking. Everything seemed to be together at that moment. I don't really see the influence of drugs now. It doesn't mean it's not there. but I didn't see it in that interview, which is the most closely the most close proximity to the events of this night that we have, is that interview. And right then and there, she seemed to be very lucid in what she was doing. But I don't doubt, but there's a long history of drug use, serious drug use. Methamphetamine is a plague in this community, and it seeped into this case as well. And it's something that we have to constantly fight against. It's not a battle that the system wins often, but we're making some headway, and every little step we take is perhaps one life that can be saved as a result of that drug coming into this community. But it's a big problem, and it is in this case. I've heard about Ms. Schabusiness's mental health history. I've read stacks and stacks of mental health records that have come in as recently as a few days ago, and I read them over, which allowed me to learn even more about Ms. Schabusiness and about her character and who she is as a person. I've heard about her son who lives in Texas, and I'm absolutely convinced that she loves her son. And I'm going to say more about that in a minute, but that's a piece of who she is because she's a mom, and I think that is a title that is a precious title, and it's an important title. I'm also convinced that a person comes into this court with their life up to that point in time as a demonstration of their character. What kind of a person are they? What do they bring to the table as a member of the human community? Not just this community, but as a community, the human community as a whole. And there are some things about Ms. Schabusiness that speak well of that. I was a little bit put off by a statement that I read in the pre-sentence investigation report, frankly, from her father. He said on page 17 of that report, "I feel like the system could have helped Taylor and kind of failed her as well." And I reflected on that because it's difficult to understand who people refer to when they say the system fails people. Because you know what? It's not the job of the system to raise people's children. The system tries to do that. The system is not perfect. Like our fight against methamphetamine is not perfect, but we carry the fight on. People in our community get into the system, be that the court system or the system dealing with child protection. Really, I think what they're referring to, I don't know, but it seems to be the government. The government needs to come in and do more to take care of people who have gone astray. And I'm not sure that that's the case. Nonetheless, attempts are made. Attempts are being made in this courthouse every day.
That makes sense.
To suggest that somehow
people should
it's the system
govern themselves.
It always surprises me a little bit when people come into court. They're coming in an orange jumpsuit and chains to suggest that it's the system that's failed my daughter. There's a certain irony in that. There really is. And it disturbed me when I read that piece. I'm not so sure it's really relevant to
that is deep.
What should happen to Ms. Schabusiness, but it was relevant to what I heard from this witness here today, because I think the system does the best it can. It's imperfect, and it has very much to do with the amount of resources that the public wants to put into the system, and those resources are finite.
Wow, that's true.
But as I say, in this building, the system is doing everything it can to fight drug use with all of our treatment courts, with everything we do, to try to help push back the plague of drug use that's occurred and that we've heard so much about in this case. So I read that statement. I heard from Ms. Schabusiness's father. He is coming in here to talk about his daughter, who's also going through the system. And I couldn't help but think of everything I heard about Ms. Schabusiness's son, because it seems to be a cycle. It seems to be just a circle. It's coming around again. So that if he ever finds himself in the situation that his mother finds himself in, where she's the only one he's got left to come in and speak for him, again, I guess it's the system that's done something, but it all starts, frankly, at somebody's home
and that's
what they
deep.
have to offer to their children. And so anyways, I reflect on that, but I'm also convinced that, no one is responsible for where they come from, but you are responsible for where you're going. So there's a lot of tragedy that has occurred in Miss Schabusiness's life. There really is. I've already reflected on some of that, and it almost seems as if you could apply the phrase "she never had a chance" to Miss Schabusiness. But as I said, you're not responsible for where you come from, but you are responsible for the choices you make about where you're going. And Miss Schabusiness has got to be held responsible for that. And this is the ending of a process that is doing just that. At the same time, I'm absolutely convinced that irrespective of the sentence that Miss Schabusiness gets, which in light of these charges is going to be a life sentence, every human being has the ability to move forward and find meaning in their life, and Miss Schabusiness has that opportunity, just like anybody else in this courtroom. She has the ability to do that, and I certainly hope that for her. But all of those things I reflect on when I consider the character of this defendant. Next, I move on to the gravity of the offense. And I sit in this chair often, and I address situations where people have lost their lives, or people have been violated terribly, and I always indicate that really the offense in this case can't be overstated, and that seems very appropriate to say that in most cases when there's been such a death or a violation. But in this case, it seems different. In this case, you seem to run out of superlatives when describing what happened in this case. You really do. The list of superlatives don't seem to measure up to what you see, what you hear about, and what we heard about in the trial. This crime offends human decency, it offends human dignity, and it offends the human community. It really does. When someone loses their life needlessly, it's tragic. It really is. It's tragic for family and friends and community. When life is taken from a person in the fashion that it was in this case, where the victim's remains are cut up and packaged in containers, it's difficult to identify a human nature in those activities. It really is. It's very troubling. It's difficult to recognize the general belonging that most people have for their community. It's difficult to recognize community in anything that happened in this case. This is a small community that we live in, where the web of relationships almost encompass everyone who lives here, such that people look out for each other and care when something bad happens to one of our members. And in a broader sense, the community we exist in is the human community, as I've reflected on. And these actions are foreign to all that community, and they shock the community beyond the ability to adequately express in words. They really do, and that's the gravity of this offense. That is the gravity of this offense. There aren't superlatives for it. There aren't really words for it. You can get a sense of it. You can get a sense of it and a feel for it, but there's no really way to express the gravity of this offense.
I think she's
so
crying.
The need to protect the public is an important factor the court needs to struggle with as well. And in light of what I've just indicated, I think it's plain that there is a need to protect the public in this case. As I said, this behavior seems so removed from the human community as to be unpredictable. It really is. And in a place where this kind of an offense, kind of actions, kind of a crime is possible, with no advanced warning signs, and absolutely anything's possible then. Where this kind of a thing is possible, absolutely anything is possible. And from that, the public needs protection. They really do. I've outlined, what I think are aggravating circumstances in this case. There are mitigating circumstances, as I've said. There's things about Miss Schabusiness regarding her upbringing and what brought her here, the struggles she's had with some mental health issues, and struggling perhaps in the context of those issues with a family who wasn't always as present as they could have been. Those are mitigating sets of circumstances. But all of those things weigh into what this court has to address. So when I consider what is an appropriate sentence, first, I think the law requires that I at least look at least some of these cases. I take a look at probationary sentences. Those aren't appropriate. They would diminish the severity of the offense. But at this time, given all the factors that I have to consider, it's the decision of this court and the judgment of the law that Ms. Schabusiness be sentenced as follows. As to in 22 CF 363, count 1, that's the first degree intentional homicide as a repeater. It's a Class A felony. I'm going to impose life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. I believe that's appropriate in light of the findings that I've already made. As far as count 2, mutilation of a corpse as a repeater, Class F felony, I'm going to adopt the recommendation of the pre-sentence investigation writer. 7.5 years of initial confinement followed by 4 years of extended supervision. That'll be consecutive to count 1. As far as count 3, third degree sexual assault as a repeater, Class G felony, I'm going to impose 3 years of initial confinement followed by 4 years of extended supervision. That will be consecutive to count 2 and count 1. As far as the revocation cases, I'm going to impose 1 year of incarceration on each of those counts. Those will run concurrent to the other offenses. I've reviewed, as I've indicated, reviewed both of the pre-sentence investigation reports. There's certainly valuable things in them. I'm going to, as conditions of supervision, I'm going to require no contact with the victim's family, maintain absolute sobriety, a complete SOT assessment and treatment follow-through, obtain and maintain full-time employment. To the extent there's ever supervision, GPS monitoring. I'm going to require an AODA assessment and follow-through, psychological evaluation and follow-through. The recommendations that are contained in the pre-sentence investigation report submitted by the defense indicates or suggests that there be services engaged in for substance abuse and other mental health issues. That's a reasonable suggestion. And I think I've encompassed it in the recommendations that I've made, which is there needs to be a compass evaluation and follow through with any treatment recommendations that are proposed. But again, an AODA assessment and follow through and psychological evaluation so that Ms. Schabusiness can get the help that she needs while she serves the sentence. I'm going to order court costs. It's $538 per count. That's a total of $1,614. That'll be the order of the court. I do need to indicate, as I'm required to at sentencing, that now that Ms. Schabusiness is convicted of a felony, she'll lose her right to vote until it's given back to her by the governor or by state law, and she may not possess a firearm or wear body armor. Any other record you'd like me to make, Mr. Saunders?
No.
Mr. Freilich, any other record?
Your Honor, the 581 days credit for time served.
Any objection to that?
No, and there's an additional 60 days on the revocation case.
No objection to that.
581 days credit on the first case, and then on the revocation cases, 60 days credit. And that'll be the order of the court. Then, Mr. Freilich, you can go over your client's appeal rights with her.
Yes, I will.
And with that, then, this matter is now concluded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. So that's what happens with Taylor Schabusiness. I guess on one of the charges it said life with no parole. That was his recommendation. What did all that mean for real? Like, I'm gonna have to sit down and break that down afterwards. I might put it down in the description, or maybe you could comment if you know. I mean, I'm gonna find it and put it in the description, gang. I kind of have to. So it is what it is. Thanks for watching with me. Thanks for following this with me. And if you like my drawings over to the side, you could like, subscribe, and show some love, support. Once I get to 1,000 subscribers and I get monetized, I'm gonna do some more original content and yeah, so I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. All right, bye everybody.